right, good afternoon everyone. How are we doing today? Today we'll be talking about reactive troubleshooting with direct support at SolarWinds Enable. Today's webinar will be presented by Bryan Zimmerman, Product Manager, and by myself, Scott Parker, a Product Marketing Manager. Today we'll be talking about what is direct support, which is a new tool that we've introduced in Central 10.0, which is frankly I think one of my favorite releases ever. It's got a lot of amazing tools in there, and this particular tool I personally find the reaction from technicians is really positive and really fantastic. It gives you a lot of ability to interact with the user's desktop without having to use a remote control tool, so less downtime, less interruption for my end users, which I think is a really positive step. We're also going to talk about how will it help me, and we're also going to talk about how do we use it. So how can you as a technician leverage this direct support product to help your end customers. So I'm going to pass it over to Bryan, who's going to take us through that.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, so first to give context here, we got to talk about what is the problem with traditional mechanisms of IT support today, and how does N-central 10 and direct support fix this? For those of you who are either using or familiar with N-central 10, this may be a bit of a review, but it's very important for us to ensure that everybody has the context going forward. After we go through this, the descriptive step, we will move into how can this benefit you and go through a couple examples of troubleshooting specific issues with the direct support toolset as an example of how you can use this to resolve tickets with your customers today. So first of all, before direct support, before integrated help desk tools like direct support, how did you used to manage your customers? And from the research we did, there's multiple tools that are used to perform a simple task. First of all, you'd receive a ticket either in your ticket management tool, or you'd receive a phone call and have to log the call in your ticket management tool. Either way, you're starting off with ticketing, and that could be or could not be integrated with your other tools. And when it's not integrated, it is an extreme amount of manual work and steps that really can be avoided. Next, you'd have your remote management and monitoring tool. This often includes a remote control, but not always. But if there isn't a good integration between your remote monitoring tool and your ticketing tool, there isn't a lot of communication back and forth, and that can be another pain point as well. But at this point, you've got your ticketing, you've got your RMM tool that gives you insight into the device, into what's happening, into the history of the device, and things of that nature. Then, of course, when it comes time to resolve issues, our customers are spending 80% of the time in remote control sessions to resolve issues. Sometimes those remote tools are integrated with the remote monitoring system, such as Enable's Direct Connect, which is integrated with the RMM tool, but not always. That isn't always the case. And then finally, to actually get into a system, you often have to have a password stored. In fact, you always have to have a password, and often you're using a password manager to do that. If you use the same password for all your systems, obviously you can avoid that step, but that's not really a great idea. And the result here is that we've really gone through 4 tools that are necessary to complete one task. And really, this is a broken workflow and something that definitely needs to be improved. And this is what we were looking to solve when we set out to build N-central 10 and direct support. Now, how does this affect you? First and foremost, it makes it harder for you to maintain your profitability with manual ticket management and manually entering the steps in for a ticket, escalating manually, ticket routing manually, and depending on remote control for troubleshooting or remediation. This means that the overhead necessary to establish a remote control session, to use Windows, to gather the info you want, is added to every single ticket that you do. And really, there's got to be a better way. And then lastly, let's say on that remote control session, I spent about 20 minutes looking at things, triaging things, taking some actions. Did I write down all those steps? And how am I going to get that into my PSA tool to track what I did? What we find in the field is a lot of technicians won't, and that means that history can't help the next technicians. Or shops that have a very clearly defined process for making sure you log all the work done, which definitely we recommend. That's work that the technicians could be using to resolve other issues. So manual ticket updates has a couple major disadvantages there. And finally, when you're depending on remote control, you're interrupting your users. Anytime you're on the system, removing their ability to work, a lot of business owners will consider that downtime. And that affects your SLAs and ultimately affects customer satisfaction. If you resolve their issue, but you took 2 hours to do it where they couldn't complete their job, they're not going to be happy at the end of the day, despite the effort and expertise that you put into resolving their problem. So doing things in a way that will not interrupt the end users and not set them up for dissatisfaction from the get-go is absolutely pivotal to maintaining good relationships. So, enter direct support. This is a set of tools that allow you to do things such as start and stop processes, control services, make registry edits, change applications, change startup applications, configure printers, run the command prompt, file system operations, and as well stock automation policies. Lots of power, lots of tools, all oriented to providing customers in a real-time help desk services and support without interrupting them. This is all done through the integrated remote management monitoring tool and does not require to kick that user off of their session on their device, which is extremely powerful. Now, how is this going to help you? To highlight this, I'd like to go through the difference between the traditional support method and the new support method within Central 10. So in traditional support, as I mentioned, you're going to start with your ticketing system. You'll open your PSA, whether that's integrated or not. You're going to look through past tickets, look for history, things of that nature. Then you'll open your RMM to see what's happening on that device. Then you'll launch a remote control session. Maybe that's integrated with the RMM, maybe it isn't. Then you'll troubleshoot the problem, which requires multiple windows, cross-referencing to research on the internet, and also documentation you have internally, as well as working on the device. And then you fix the problem, of course, and disconnect. Now, all these steps are interrupting the user, and sometimes they can take a lot of time, especially when research is required. So that is negative in terms of that user experience. Then afterwards, you open your PSA, you open the ticket, you hope that you took good records of everything you did, and you manually typed in those notes, and there you have it. So it's a long, disjointed process that interrupts the user. Not a lot of not really setting yourselves up for a great customer experience. Now, in Central 10 with direct support, you'd open the RMM, and within that RMM, you can find the device associated active tickets, look at recent tickets, and actually be directed to the ticketing solution directly if you'd like to read the resolutions for those existing tickets and previous tickets, which is fantastic. So in that same single pane of glass interface, you can get insight not only to what's happening on the device, but what's happened in the past on that device and what has been the ticket history on that device. Next, you can troubleshoot the problem from within the dashboard using the direct support toolset, fix the problem remotely, and all of this without interrupting that user. And once it's complete, you can push notes of what you did to the ticket with our integrated audit trail, update ticket status, and resolve the issue. So we've taken a disjointed long process, we've simplified it, we've shrunk it, and we've avoided interrupting the user during the entire process. Now, are you going to be able to do this on every call? No, but the idea here is to use these tools on as many tickets as possible so that you can free up your technicians' time to do more valuable activities. And from our research, from our customers, they say that 50% of the issues that we face, here's a quote from one of our customers, could be resolved within the direct support console. So if you can use this to resolve 50% of your help desk tickets, imagine how much extra time your technicians would have. And the second piece of this is often tasks that may have taken 5, 10, 15 minutes before are now taking 30 seconds, 1 minute. Very small amounts of time to resolve it from within that tool set. So half the time you're spending less than half the time to resolve issues. That has huge power. Your technicians could be spending time with activities that delight customers, with project-related revenue-generating activities, with activities that help create stickier customers, happier customers, more referrals, and ultimately grow your business in a more scalable way. And what's the dream here? Here's an example of one of our customers who's been able to answer 90% of their tickets within 8 minutes. And this really is what we're looking at is in the world of now, which is today, people want everything immediately. They want everything yesterday, and they want service as fast as is humanly possible, and even a bit beyond. So the more you can do to resolve tickets quicker, the more time you have to answer your customers within their expected SLAs. Now, how are we going to use this? First, let's give you some advice for how to encourage the use of direct support troubleshooting within your customers. And then we're going to go through a couple examples of doing this on a live system. So first of all, the best advice I can give you is build this into your standard protocols. We have a number of customers who are being very successful at this, and we have an even larger number who are using it with a good amount of success. And the thing they have in common is that they're building this into their day-to-day. They've really evangelized the concept of direct support with their customers. They've gotten them used to using it, and it's the first thing that they go to when troubleshooting any help desk ticket, both at the L1 and L2 level. Next is, of course, encouraging that use and adoption. Really, you need to give them a reason to try it. And once they get a taste for what this can do for them, trust me, the adoption will come and it will encourage itself. But you got to get that ball rolling. And we definitely recommend that you use this as a first step for all your tickets. You tell your technicians, your L1s and L2s alike, when you get a ticket, go into Incentral, go into the device, research the history, look at the active dashboard, use the tool set as much as you can until you get to the point that you would normally hand that off. And that activity is going to happen a lot quicker. You're going to resolve more tickets in first contact. You're going to set your L2s up for more success and give them the ability to resolve things quicker as well. Okay, so now let's look at a couple examples of what this could look like on an actual problem system. So in the first example, let's say we're troubleshooting an issue with slow system startup. So give me a moment. I'm going to pull up our Incentral environment, and let's talk about how we could use Incentral to resolve that issue. Okay, so now what you can see in front of you is our Incentral RMM console. For those of you not familiar with Incentral, we are a single pane of glass remote monitoring, management, and automation platform, which now includes help desk services through direct support. And what you're looking at here is the all devices view, which shows at the MSP level every device that we have under management. It allows us to view them, to action them, to remote control them, to run direct support tools, remote control just by this button, direct support tools by the drop down you see here. And I've actually filtered this for the particular device that I'm looking for, but of course I can see every device in the system very, very easily. Filtering down to the device I actually care about at any point in time. Accessing that device is easy as a click of the button. Now, if you want to find out more about Incentral, definitely reach out to us at sales@n-able.com, and we've got a couple links later on in the webinar to show you how you can try and find out more about our whole offering and what we do. Now, looking into the main subject of this webinar, let's continue troubleshooting our slow system startup problem. So the particular user here who's logged this case, I've opened up his device, and immediately what you can see is that I have a dashboard style view of everything that's happening on this device. Under active issues, it will show me every monitoring check, also called a service, that is not in a normal state. So if I'm watching things like Windows event log, CPU process memory, and they are not within normal parameters that I've defined previously, or using the defaults, of course, it will show up here. So what I see is one issue related to patch status, but I don't really think this has anything to do with slow startup. It could, but I'm not really drawn to that, so I'm going to move on from this. But at a glance, I've been able to see what conditions exist in the system that I'm monitoring that might cause this problem. Second thing that my eye turns to is recent tickets. So I can look on this device what other tickets have been logged related to this issue or on this device in general. And do any of them have to do with my problem? And if so, I can click on that, look in my PSA, my integrated PSA system, and understand what was the resolution last time. Or what are we working on as well? And what common threads exist? Research shows that one of the best things you can do to help technicians resolve issues quickly is give them the history for when that issue was resolved before. If I have the same problem logged every few months, the user may not remember it's the same problem, but that technician, if they have a ticket history, they can easily see, well, what did I do to resolve this last time? And simply implement those recommendations. You're giving them the intelligence not only of what they've solved before, but what their colleagues have solved before as well, specific to that device. So very, very powerful. Then, of course, I can move down and see system information. Is there a hardware condition that's related to this? Do I have, are there any disk issues? Do I have, am I underpowered from a memory perspective? Is this an old decommissioned out of warranty system that I should consider looking at it from a hardware perspective? This can be easily seen by our system information widget, and as well you can go into the asset details for more data. Now, because this is a startup issue, this is really giving me point of time information, but in terms of system performance in general, I can see CPU and memory easily in these widgets. And I can actually see, okay, well, what process is using this high CPU? And for me, it seems to be always Chrome. So if I were looking at what was the issue what were the processes that were causing performance issues, I would focus on the highest CPU and memory utilizing processes, which in this case is Chrome and, of course, SVC host. Okay, so there's a lot of really rich information in terms of what's happening on this system just from within these widgets. And I haven't had to drill into a service, change tabs, open a new screen, let alone open a new tool. All of this is available to me from within this device view, all in the single pane of glass and central interface. Now when it comes to moving on to troubleshooting and resolving the issues, I'm going to open the Tools menu. Now this Tools menu gives me access to all the processes we talked about, services, processes, registry, etc. And what I'm troubleshooting here is slow system startup. So I'm going to move to the startup application side of things. And in the startup application side of things, you can see that I can actually filter for startup impact. And I've actually got a couple systems here that are listed as high startup impact. So I'm going to turn my attention there. Now, you may ask yourself, can I disable these? So this first process is a Microsoft process. I'm not super familiar. I don't think I can disable that safely. But this second one, power management utility, what's that? Let's drill in. Okay, this is a Lenovo-based power management utility. And I'm familiar with this, and I know that I can live without it. So I'm simply going to disable this at startup, reboot, see how that affects my user's experience. If that resolves the issue, great, my work is done. If it doesn't resolve the issue, I can simply remove other startup items from startup with that same process until I get to the culprit, to what's causing that issue. And most of the time, startup applications running resident in the background, are going to be causing slow startup applications. So you can see where this would really help you. Now let's move on to another example which is related but different, which is bad performance while operating. So not startup performance, but just slow system performance in general. In this case, I would do the same steps, look at active issues, look at recent tickets, look at CPU and memory, but I would really focus on, what are the things what are the resources that can get exhausted? There's CPU, memory, disk, and network. And I'm going to focus mostly on CPU, memory, and disk. Now in this case, this system is not using a high amount of CPU or high amount of memory. If they were, I would look at what is the process that's consistently using that resource, and what can I do to impact that process's performance. The third item, disk, is not immediately apparent in the dashboard, but it is apparent if I go into Tools, Processes. I can actually filter on what are the processors that are using my CPU. In this case, Chrome's using 21%, which is quite a bit, but it's not unusable. It's using a decent amount of memory, but not the highest. Highest amount of memory is Chrome, actually. And what's the disk access? Highest amount of disk access on this system is once again Chrome. So really, it actually on this system is Chrome that is using the most amount of all my key resources. So what I would look at is, what are the add-ons? What can I do to resolve this? Or is this system really getting to a point where it needs more resources? But what you can see in a few seconds, I've really pointed myself to what is the thing I should be focusing on, and what can I do to resolve this issue? If this wasn't a critical application, I would stop it from running on startup. I would kill that application, and you can do that very easily by right-clicking. So I could simply go right-click and end a process. Now the last example we're going to give you here very quickly is an example of troubleshooting network communication. So if a customer calls you and says, hey, my internet's slow, or my internet's broken. We all know the internet's not broken, and the internet's probably not slow either, but the computer might be. So it's a very difficult thing to troubleshoot. A lot of it has to do with discussing with the customer and understanding what they're really referring to. But this tool makes that a lot easier once you have a direction to go in. So I can simply look at, let's say for this example, after I talk with the customer, I find out it's not a browser problem. It's actually a problem while opening even File Explorer. Outlook will just intermittently stop communicating or stop being able to send or receive emails. Browsers will intermittently become disconnected, and browsing to a file share will become inaccessible every once in a while. So I'm going to think that there might be an intermittent network problem. And this is an example of how we can do power use cases as well as the simple ones. So I can simply open the integrated command prompt and I can start troubleshooting more network focused things. For instance, I can look, have LSPs been installed recently with NetSH, WinSock, Audit Trail. In this case, there hasn't been any new LSPs installed. I can look at doing a ping to the default gateway and see if that comes back with any amount of packet loss. I can do a ping to any kind of free DNS server or external site and see, is that successful? Am I getting a reply? Are the response times acceptable? I could do a ping based on with a different number of hops. I can set the packet size. I can do trace routes, whatever is necessary to get the information necessary to resolve the issue. And of course, if I want to look at what LSPs are installed, I can simply show the catalog and look for any non-standard LSPs that might be impacting the performance. So this is an example of a more power user type, more complicated issue to resolve, but an example of how we can actually get to the root of the problem and troubleshoot issues using the advanced tool sets such as file system, command prompt, registry editors, etc. So the real point of this was just to give you a taste of what we can do with this tool set, how powerful it is, and what direction should you really go in with your technicians. And now I'm happy to answer any questions if we've had any, Scott.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Brian. Really nice walkthrough. Appreciate that. There are a couple questions that I think are interesting and we should definitely dive into. I know we have limited time here, but one of them was bandwidth. So we're familiar with remote control and the kind of bandwidth that consumes. What is direct support going to do on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've actually done a lot of work in terms of limiting the bandwidth the agent uses, first of all. So any new bandwidth that direct support introduces is going to be dramatically offset with the savings that we've made by just encrypting things better and reducing overall network bandwidth. The other thing is we've done a lot of metrics on this, and base tool usage, when I'm in my tool and looking at things and making some minor changes to processes, services, you're going to use about 6 megabytes per hour based on our research. And that's compared to 2 megabytes a minute with remote control. So you're talking 6 versus 120.
Wow.
Dramatically different. There obviously is going to be more bandwidth usage when you're sending large files, browsing the registry, doing some more complicated operations because there's more data to send. But what we've seen in our tests is, in all cases, the amount that you'll be using with direct support is much, much less than you can with a remote control tool. Greatest example of this is our manager was on a plane, and if any of you have tried to use plane internet before, you know how horrible that is.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
Absolutely. He realized he forgot a presentation on his desktop. So he tried to remote control to the desktop using enable tools, using other third-party tools, and just establishing a remote control was not possible because of the bandwidth and latency involved. So he opened up in Central, opened up direct support, file transfer wizard, retrieved his presentation file, and he could work on it while on the plane. Great example of how this can succeed when other tools can't.
That's really cool. All right. Another question was, what does direct support work on? So talk a little bit about Pro and Essential licensing, and maybe if you could, I know we only have a couple more minutes, about what OSs and platforms are supported.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a Windows only application. It runs on the target device needs to be Windows. As far as the device that the technician is using, there's nothing installed locally. It's all using our web interface. So it's really based on the browsers, and it can work on Chrome, Firefox, NIE. That's all our supported browsers. For information on Microsoft Edge browser coming in Windows 10, look at blogs.n-able.com, and there's a statement about our plan for Windows 10 support in general. As Incentral supports Windows 10, so will direct support. The great thing about direct support is it is included in your Pro license. So this is not a separate module that you have to add on to your existing Pro licenses in Incentral. But if you want to add it to Essential licenses, we've also created an add-on SKU that you can apply to Essential licenses. So if you have customers that are fully managed, they get this. You get this ability to service your customers better already in your Incentral system. This is something you have access to today. If you're not an Incentral customer, then Pro licenses will give you access to all the wonderful features we've talked about. If you want to extend this features to customers who aren't fully managed and currently using Essential type licenses, you can do that as an add-on service, and the cost is much less than upgrading to a full Pro.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, so obviously for information on pricing, you're going to want to reach out to your sales account rep. If you're interested in this product, if you're interested in direct support specifically, maybe you're already an existing customer of N-Central, but you haven't done the upgrade to 10. First of all, I'd highly encourage you to. It's a fantastic platform. It's definitely one of the biggest iterations, I think, in our history. A lot of fresh new tools and a whole refreshed UI, etc. So really, really a nice release. If you're interested in just getting a peek at it, go to www.n-able.com/try. That'll give you a hosted trial that you can log into for 30 days and play with it to your heart's content. So I really encourage people to go take a look at it, if only to just test it out. So test it out. I think you'll be a convert and pleasantly surprised. So thank you very much to everyone who was able to attend today. Really appreciate your time, and we hope direct support looks like something that you and your environment can make good use of moving forward.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.